it's a difficult question because there is no core or essence of an American identity, and anyone can be an American and they can take their culture and their traditions with them.
We have an amazing guest here, guys. Yes, he's actually here. Please welcome Dr. Peter Boghossian. I was just watching your recent podcast with Douglas Murray, and you guys were talking a lot about this idea of the American identity, and that it's kind of been lost. What do you see as that American identity? The characteristics. What would make for an American identity?
Would make for an American identity? I think it's an interesting question. I think to be an American, anybody can be an American. Somebody can be one day off the boat here and they can be an American. I don't think that Americans have any particular characteristics other than the idea that they should. I mean, it's a difficult question because there is no core or essence of an American identity, and anyone can be an American and they can take their culture and their traditions with them. I think if there were a root identity, it would be the idea that people should be able to pursue the kind of life that they want to lead. They should let other people pursue the types of life they want to lead. They should be able to live free and let others live free. So I think freedom is at the core of that identity, and navigating the difficulties if people have different ideas or opinions or views of the world, then it's not just a toleration of those ideas, but it's the acknowledgement that free societies actually encourage intellectual cognitive pluralism.
Absolutely. Well said. So that kind of ties into something I've heard you say a number of times that, you know, I know that you, actually, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. So I want to
I'm going to eat my blueberries while you talk. I got these fresh blueberries.
Enjoy. I'm from Jersey, so we got the best blueberries out there. Yeah, you know, I very much am a very staunch atheist, but I have a lot of Christian followers because I do believe that within the Christian faith, there's a lot of good values like community and family and tradition and all these things that as Americans, we should be able to say that's what an American is. And I think that a big part of the chasm that exists between people trying to have these political discussions is, you know, the different realities that we're living in that are getting further and further apart. And so what I try to do here is to try to bridge that gap. And I often say that despite the fact that I am an atheist, I was born into the Catholic Church, confirmed in the Methodist Church, and I am totally for Christian values. I just happen not to believe in the truth claims. So, and there's, you know,
that's quite the irony coming from the IndianJesus, by the way.
Yeah, right. Built in. Yeah. And it's very difficult to, you know, I have an uphill battle to Christians to show that, hey, I'm actually on your side, even though I don't believe this thing. And you had mentioned that as being someone who was associated with the new atheism movement, that seems to kind of morphed into this leftism political ideology. That maybe you feel a little bit of guilt about that. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, I've done a number of interviews about that with Michael Shermer, Richard Dawkins, and many others. And I've done it's called the substitution hypothesis. But let's get back to something you said earlier. There are many, it was a kind of a compound question, so we have to look at those atomically or discretely.
Sure.
So what many Christians understand and many other Christians do not understand is that if, I hate to say this in terms of sides, but it really is a kind of a side. If the side of liberty loses and the side of authoritarianism and dogmatism wins, and the side of liberty is more or less anti-woke, although not exclusively. And the side of authoritarianism is certainly woke. Wokeism is inherently dogmatic and authoritarian. What many of the more hardcore fundamentalist believers don't understand is that in the current situation in which we find ourselves, metaphysics is largely irrelevant. Whether someone walked on water or wine into whatever, it doesn't make any difference. If I fail in this fight, their ability to have cognitive liberty will be severely curtailed, to say the least. Thing could be actually far worse than that. But for many people who are caught in the thrones of delusions, many specifically fundamentalist believers, they can't understand that. They can't get past those fundamental biases of, oh, that person's not a Christian, he's a bad person. Like, look what the Christian nationalists are doing to Vivek Ramaswamy right now. They're going crazy on him. They're going berserk because he might share their other values by and large, but he's a Hindu and they're upset about that. And he's a vegetarian, and what a bizarre thing to be upset about. They're upset about that. So we have a very unusual situation. Most Christians will see this, but the most, I'm trying to think of a politic or a polite way to say this. There's really no polite way to say this. Those who are just absolutely fundamentalist hardcore, they don't understand that they have to support people who have a different metaphysics if they want to retain their ability to pray and worship as they like, and to live a kind of, to piggyback off of what you said before, an American life, the quintessential American life. So that's the first answer to your question. The second one is the substitution hypothesis, which I've been talking about for months and months. I hate to pay myself a compliment, but I'm kind of like the Nostradamus of this stuff. So the substitution hypothesis, there's been a ton of stuff recently. My friend Brendan O'Neill and Spike just put out a piece about this, why so many of the new atheists became hoodwinked, not even hoodwinked, just true believers in this, the new orthodoxy. I mean, really crazy stuff, like dating a person with a penis who claims they're a woman and saying they're heterosexual. I mean, just stuff that's just,
you can only believe it if you're in that cult of saying, oh, this is the right thing to say. You know,
yeah, and many people, you know, I was talking to Richard about that, and the old guard, Harris, Hitchens is dead, but Dennett, myself, Shermer, and others, we never fell for this. So the question is, why do some people fall for it and others don't? But particularly, why do many atheists fall for it when that's the whole raison d'etre of their existence, and it's how they view the world as being quote unquote anti-religious, and then they fell into a cult themselves. So there was a religion that evolved within an anti-religious movement, and some have been slow, without naming names, to come around and see that. And it's a fascinating
Sam Harris. Sorry.
It's a fault. No, I wasn't thinking of Sam. It's a fascinating cult-like phenomenon that we could benefit from looking at. I think it deals with the architecture of the brain and the software that comes in. But that's called the substitution hypothesis. I wasn't sure who came up with that phrase, so I asked James Lindsay. I thought it was either me, Jim, or Peterson, and it wasn't him. I think it was me, but it could have been Peterson. But the idea is that as the belief in Christianity goes down, something else goes up. So as the belief in Christianity falls, particularly the metaphysics of the Christianity, although the Christian cultural values remain, something else has to take its place. And those are direct. Clay Rutledge, the psychologist, writes about this more broadly, but those take place in direct correspondence to each other.